Hello and welcome to Dice Sagas. I'm Christian. This battle report is going to be Corvus Cabal versus Kharadron Overlords. So within our pocket realm we will be doing both Age of Sigmar and Warcry battle reports, well, narrative battle reports. So this is our first one of Warcry, so we hope you enjoy it.
Shadowy figures dash across the rafters and rooftops. The hordes of Khorne have left the raised settlement, leaving only a blood stain to mark its existence. They were not without losses though, as the Kharadron Overlords brought swift retribution upon them from the skies. The brutish warriors received a bombardment that they won't soon forget. As dawn arrives, it is deathly quiet, with only the whirring motors of the engine riggers to disturb the scene. The Admiral had ordered a ground crew to scour the town for anything of worth. The trade port here was lost, but he had hoped that something of worth could be salvaged from this desolate townscape. The skeleton crew peered in and out of buildings, searching for treasures or survivors. They hold their weapons close and their trigger fingers twitching, only held still by years of training and strict discipline. Malkan Thunderhold, the Sergeant Grunstock Thunderer and leader of this expedition, walks carefully in the streets as daylight slowly breaks over the horizon. Rays of light flash into his goggles as he passes each alleyway, his heavy footsteps breaking a puff of ash in his wake. He sent one of the engine riggers to survey the scene above, before coming back to report to him with any findings. But in the dim lights of the morning and the smoky haze of the smoldering town, he had little hopes for anything significant. He breathes hard into his respirator. He hated the scrounging duty. It was a lot more fun last night blasting the forces of Khorne from the deck of the frigate. Simple pleasures in life. A pair of Arcanaut privateers shout over to him.
Nothing to report in the southwest quadrant.
He waves a hand signal to him, getting them to circle and sweep across to the east. A waste of time, he thinks to himself, as he checks the gauges on his double-barreled Aether-shot rifle again, unaware of the shadows stalking his group on the cliffs above. Making about the same amount of noise as a ruffling of feathers, three agile bodies move to a cliff edge, overlooking the town and peer down at the Dwarden search party. Skulls from birds of prey conceal their faces, and feathers adorn their bodies. The Lineade clan had watched the town of Fairtarm for some time before the horde of Khorne descended upon it. Their clan and lineage stretches back far into history. They were employed as master spies and assassins without equal, their stealth and guile matched only by their viciousness and violence in combat amongst mortal men.
なんだそれ?
asks the younger one. He stoops down, leaning on his spear to take a hard look at the Dwarden below. He licks his lips, anticipating the fight ahead. He bore large black feathers on his shoulder guard, unmarked and undecorated, indicating a lower rank amongst his clan. Until they were proven worthy, he and everyone in his position were only known as Tori by their seniors.
金属ダメだ.
The young woman says, hefting her heavy cleaver over her shoulder. Tatsumaki, leader and shadow piercer of the Lineade, could feel the strings of fate at play here. It would have taken months to infiltrate the Dwarden settlement to find the artifact they were after. But destiny had brought the town to ruin, and she simply needed to retrieve it now. That is, if it weren't for those pirates in her way. She sends her personal crow into the sky in a silent flight, and through the powers of her ancestors, she could see everything her familiar could in her mind's eye. The Dwarden dotted the town. Dispatching of them silently and quickly in a small group will be the easiest way forward.
おばあさん?
she says, turning to the older woman, hunched over and crouching low to the ground. The one-eyed crow is perched upon her weathered finger, waiting to take flight. The rusted kama in her hands had seen through decades of butchering, many of which while Tatsumaki was under her wing. She gives a quick nod to her clan leader before jumping down onto one of the darkened alleyways, her quick and lithe movements unhindered by age. Tatsumaki watches as her mentor leaves before she herself gets into position.
気をつけて。
A sudden shout pierces the morning silence, disturbing a flock of carrion birds that had begun feasting upon the many dead. Excited hoots echoed in the empty town as an Arcanaut privateer discovers something of value.
Sarge, over here. I think I found something.
Malkan gives a deep sigh as he puffs out a breath of cigar smoke. Waving another one of his thunderers over to him, they make their way towards their allies.
This better be good.
He steps out of the building with a caved-in roof to the sound of crows cawing in the distance, drowning out the sound of light footsteps in the darkened streets. An engine rigger descends to land onto one of the surviving rooftops. The buildings around it had been blasted into rubble by the surprise attack of the Arcanaut fleet in the night before, and even this one reeked of blast powder and decaying flesh. As he sets his feet upon the ground once more, he stretches his neck and shoulders.
Oh, they don't pierce enough to float around in these things. My neck is killing me.
The pull of the harness straps were painful on longer journeys, and the whir of the engine on his back often left his ears ringing for hours afterwards. He peers over the edge of the rooftop at his companions, trying to see what they had found. Against the incessant whir of the engine, he had no way of hearing Komio, the spire stalker, climbing deftly up the side of the building. The cutting of the air as the blade slashes at the engine rigger announces the malicious intent, sending the floating Dwarden screaming as he revs his chainsword to swing in retaliation. The machine blade grazes the lithe warrior, parried by his blade and claw.
無駄だ.
He shouts back, locking his enemy into combat. Through the noise and confusion, Hira, the Shrike Talon, swoops down with raking claws. The Dwarden is unable to remain aloft and falls crashing off the side of the building. In unison, the town erupts in the cawing of crows as shifting shadows dart between walls, columns, and rooftops. Malkan curses as his cigar drops out of his mouth.
It's an ambush.
Two figures leap across a rooftop in front of him, and he draws a bead before making a double blast with his aether-shot rifle.
しまった。
Tatsumaki stops in her tracks and crouches down low as her follower Tori falls to the ground, crying out in agony. The blast had maimed both of his legs severely, and he could not stand anymore. She looks at him and his pleading eyes, as if he was looking at his mother. She had to make a decision there and then. Taught from a young age that the clan can only survive when it is strong. Weakness had to be removed utterly. She levels her blade against the Tory's head and stares at his tear-filled eyes. This was the way of her clan.
ごめんなさい。
As shouts of battle begin to fill the air, the Arcanaut Marines begin to group up with guns at the ready.
Let them eat lead.
Spotting one of the Spire Stalkers in the alleyway, a Gruntstock Thunderer lets loose a blast from his deck sweeper. A barrage of shot peppers the Linear Day warrior. A second volley brings a column crashing down on him, knocking him unconscious in the alley. From adjacent streets, several more of the ravenous chaos flock come streaming in. Raven darts fly through the air to pierce the armor of the Arcanauts as they close their distance. With the thunderous blast of the deck sweeper, Hira takes wing once more and leaps off the roof to glide over two of the Arcanauts, slashing them with his rending claws as he swoops on by. His claws catch the polearm of one of the Dwardens, pulling the poor man to ground as his companions try to fend swiping claws. From behind, another Spire Stalker dashes forwards to send a rending cleave through the privateer's pistol, sending it scattering in pieces to the ground. The Dwarden starts shouting for retreat as flares light up in the dim dawn sky.
That's the signal! Get to extraction!
Malkan could hear the screams of his men as gunfire echoes through the streets and is abruptly cut off. He loads 2 shells hastily into his rifle as he calls for his companion to fire a signal flare of retreat into the sky. A bright red flare explodes in the sky as the pair begin to make a retreat towards the rendezvous point to the north of the city. A cool breeze brushes over the two, which makes Malkan wheel around. Tatsumaki dives down blade first, slashing through the mortar cannon of Malkan's companion. She takes a second swing, slashing a deep wound on the Thunderer before kicking him through a broken section of wall. Malkan takes several steps back and takes a quick shot at the Shadow Piercer. She dodges, but is grazed by the attack.
Damned Thagaraki!
Feeling that this was her chance to finish him, she rushes forwards before he gets a chance to reload. Closing the distance, she attempts to sunder his weapon from his hands, but to her surprise, he quickly fires from a second barrel in his rifle. With quick reflexes, she uses the broadside of her blade to deflect the blast, but is pushed back and sent sprawling to the ground. Malkan hurriedly reaches into his satchel for another shell to load, but a large, one-eyed crow swoops in and begins harassing him. The bird, pecking at his goggles and helmet, gives Tatsumaki the opportunity to dash away, her broken blade melted by the heat of the blast. By the time Malkan repels the bird, she is nowhere to be seen, and he goes to aid his companions as they withdraw. Malkan gets to the extraction point as the gun hauler touches down. Several from his search party are already waiting for him, many injured to various degrees, recounting their encounters with the enemy. As they are lifted away from the town, one of the Marine pulls out a flask, carefully tucked between several folds of cloth.
Sir, here's what we found. What do you suppose it is?
A glinting liquid slides and shifts within the vessel, with hints of silver and gold as the light passes through it. This was the first time Malkan had seen Chamonite, but he knew that his superiors would be pleased with the find. Tatsumaki reconvenes with her clan in the cliffs overlooking the town, the smell of carrion lingering in the air as morning light begins to warm the day. To her relief, she sees her old mentor uninjured, tending to her crow once again. One of the spire stalkers were injured, but not gravely, proudly showing their battle scars. Hira walks jaggedly over to Tatsumaki. His talon stilts made his gait strange to behold, but he did so effortlessly, as if it was natural to him. He asked in a hush. She averts her gaze, looking at the ruined blade on the ground. He puts a hand on her shoulder as he walks past. One of the Tories hands her a satchel, and within it a small flask of liquid so light it feels as if it floated. It shimmers like liquid silver, catching all of the brilliance of the sun. The younger members of the band look at it in awe, not truly understanding what it is for, nor what it means. To Tatsumaki, however, she only saw her destiny.
Thank you for viewing our video. If you like the content, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell icon too to be notified of future content. We've also got links to Facebook and Instagram in the links below. We've also started a Patreon. It's by no means an obligation, however, if you'd like to support the channel, please obviously check that out. It's down below in the description too. I'd like to thank you again for viewing our content. Take care and let the dice tell the story.